Hey folks, Lisa Hendrickson here from Call That Girl, and thank you for checking out my Office 365 courses here on YouTube. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. If you want to get on our email list for future notifications of release of videos, you can subscribe down below also, and you'll be on the list then for some giveaways and rewards and goodies that we have coming up here in the future. I'd also like to take a minute to thank AppRiver for sponsoring the courses. They are my Office 365 vendor I've had for 5 years now. I'm on their partner program, which means my clients pay AppRiver for their Office 365, but a lot of technicians use their MSP reseller, and that's great because then you can use their AppRiver tech support for everything you need, and you never have to call Microsoft, which I love. I never want to call them. In course number 4, you can watch that, and we have a BitTitan Migration Wiz demo, which you can get 3 licenses for free, and that's great for you to test Migration Wiz with a small batch of mailboxes and see how that works. And also down below is an FAQ page, which has a lot more information than I can say right now in this video, but it has links for you to check out our marketing partners. Channel Pro Magazine has a free subscription, the Facebook IT Business Owners Group, D7, GE Geek, and Launch UX, which is my WordPress technician I use for all of my websites. And finally, be sure to check out the Facebook group for Office 365. We have over 1,100 members, and everything is all tech support, very few things that are not related to tech support in there. International group, great group of folks. I love it. That's it. And watch the next course, and I'll look forward to seeing you at the end there. Thanks. Welcome to Call That Girl's Office 365 course. This is course number 8, and this week I have with me Paul Joyner from the Sysadmin Today podcast, who's going to do a demo for simple SharePoint and basics. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yay, thanks for coming on here. I think if folks aren't aware of your podcast, it's doing quite well for just being out, what, a year now?
Yeah, a little over a year. Yep.
Yeah, Paul actually impressed me. He was like, I'm going to do this podcast, and he did all his research, and he contacted other podcasters and asked us to help. And I was like, I never even thought about doing that when I first kicked off mine. So, but anyway, Paul, tell us a little bit about your podcast and what your topics are and your audience and how often you do them.
Sure. I've probably been doing them about every other week now, twice a month, maybe 3 times a month. The typical audience is for anybody who's managing IT, whether even from a CIO level down to the tech level or a help desk level, basically everything in between. And we really try to focus on what's it like being a system administrator today, because it's vastly different than what it used to be 10 years ago. And all the new cloud technologies and the different software as a service out there. And we just pick a topic usually each week. Some weeks are I'm just telling a whole bunch of stories, which they get a lot of good feedback on. And for instance, my last one, we talked about managing workstations and what it is to properly manage workstations. And, that's basically the format. And so far, so good.
Nice. Well, when I started doing the course, reviewing the courses here, I forgot why I reached out to you about it, but I think we talked about SharePoint once, and you said,
yep.
Oh, let me do a SharePoint one. And you started going into crazy, like, advanced level stuff. And I was like, okay, Paul, let's start with simple here, okay? Because sometimes our audience here in the courses are new to Office 365. Mm-hmm. And a lot of technicians I know don't want to even learn it because they think it's, outside of their knowledge range, or they don't want to support it, or their clients don't want to buy it. But what I've found is that basically a lot of people are using OneDrive, and they shouldn't be. So I try to use the tips. OneDrive is for one person. SharePoint is for sharing. So once I teach them the difference there and give them some tips and basically what you're going to be doing, they're on SharePoint and they love it. So this is for technicians to watch this demo, listen to Paul, and take some tips and try to sell it to your clients and earn some extra revenue by selling and supporting it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Paul, well, you can go ahead and start your demo here. I'm excited to see what you do versus what I do. I want to learn too, and I'll have questions.
Well, sure. Well, I have a few things, at least that, I sent you earlier, just a few things before we start the demo is mainly what is SharePoint? We'll do a quick high level. Sure. Why do we want to use SharePoint? We're going to demo some of the features, and then we're going to just talk about maybe finish up with maybe a little bit of OneDrive versus SharePoint at the end. So with that being said, what is SharePoint? Well, basically SharePoint is a web platform. And Microsoft developed this back in the late 90s because there was no unified way to manage documents. And so they were really one of the first ones to do it. And so they got together and they said, okay, let's have a way where we can get everything together and be able to have compliance and have structure and have reporting. And boom, that's how really SharePoint became. Sometimes you might hear the word SharePoint and you might hear the word team sites. That's basically the same thing. So this is a key word that you might hear. And again, it's really designed to actually be a replacement for your traditional file servers, your G drive. And also it's designed to be a replacement for your public folders in Exchange. Mm-hmm. And matter of fact, Microsoft actually removed public folders there for a little while when Exchange 2007 came out, and then everybody went crazy because they're saying, use SharePoint, use SharePoint. Of course, that didn't go over too well, and actually they still exist today, but this is just how Microsoft likes to think. So that's basically what SharePoint is in a nutshell, and just some of the reasons why we want to use SharePoint. Again, it is a web platform, and because it is a web platform, you can virtually get it on any device, whether you're Mac, Linux, iOS, Android, you can just get it anywhere. And so with that, this supports BYOD initiatives. So you can really just have a nice way where people can have their documents, have their own computer, and still be able to be in compliance. It works, again, we already talked about it. It works with just about every client out there. There's really no VPN required, especially if you're doing Office 365 or SharePoint online. So you don't have to fumble around with VPN clients trying to get to your site. You just use an app or go to the website. Let's see, very mobile friendly. We touched base on that. Extremely scalable and redundant. And what I mean by that is, especially with SharePoint Online, if you need more storage, you just pay for it. Right. And just to give you an idea, you're roughly paying, I think the last I saw is like, 6 cents per gig per month or something like that. It's very, very affordable. That could be uprated, marked up how you want to do it. And redundant means Microsoft did all the back end work. So you don't have to worry about clustering and having different databases and worrying about downtime and things like that. It helps eliminate collaboration through email.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
If trained properly, and if everybody's using it at the same time, you kind of go through that inbox torture chamber. And I could go on a lot of ways with that one, but it can. If everybody's on pace, it can really just get rid of that. You just use email for everything.
Right.
It'll have a lot of data governance in place. You're not going to have to worry so heavily on traditional backups and trying to restore data by using like versioning. Users can actually restore their own data. You have 2 layers of recycle bin. So users, if you have, delete something, you can go to recycle bin. And if you have somebody who's malicious or accidental and they go to the recycle bin, delete it, you have what's called a second recycle bin to further protect the data. So there's a lot of data protection, especially considered from a traditional file server. Because if you think about it, if you have a G drive and you go to delete a document from your G drive, it's not in the recycle bin of the file server, it's deleted.
Right.
And you have to go back to your traditional backups to get it. So SharePoint eliminates a lot of that admin overhead. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're going to touch base on a lot more. And what we can do is we'll just start firing up the demo and rocking it out.
All right, Paul, let's get rocking then.
Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we're just going to pretend we went to Microsoft and we signed up with a 365 account. So we have a global admin or a SharePoint admin account. We can log in and do our thing. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our site. And I'm just going to use, I actually have a 365 account with my Sysadmin Today podcast. So I'm a subscriber.
Show it up.
So I made it blank. So we're going to really see what it kind of basically what it looks like when you first log in.
Awesome.
So the first thing we're going to do is go to https colon / / and it's going to be your tenant domain. So in my case, it's sysadmin today. This will be whatever it is that when you sign up.
Okay.
Oh, not on my. I'm so used to typing that. It's at SharePoint.com. There we go. And from here, we're going to log in. As you can see, I have other things here. So we're going to log in with mine. And we'll put in my password. And I have 2-factor, so let me pull out my cell phone here.
Sweet. Good boy. Good boy.
Oh, in today's world, you got to.
Yeah, and actually, I think I'm going to have you go back a step 2. I'd like to show the folks how to get to SharePoint from the login portal when you first get in.
Okay.
Okay, so at the top, this is a setup. Keep that tab open, but go to the second tab and type in login. There you go. Or you can go to portal.office or outlook.office365.com. There's plenty of ways to get there.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now this is where I usually start my clients when I train them, just to give you a heads up.
Okay.
So, and just click the SharePoint, and that's the, that's how I show them.
Sure. Okay, so we're going to, like you see the 2 different tabs, so we'll actually go into SharePoint here. Right. So we'll click on SharePoint.
Cool.
Okay, and I can tell I did a little bit of testing. This is actually fairly new. Microsoft actually added this not too terribly long ago. It used to just take you right straight into it. Now it gives you all your frequent sites that if you have multiple sites, you'll see different places you can just go dive right in. So I'm just going to go right into my team site.
Sweet.
And this is your vanilla basic SharePoint site. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to just do a few little cosmetic things that's real simple. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about permissions, because permissions is absolutely vital in SharePoint. Because once you know permissions, because to me, your whole design on how you're going to do SharePoint is around your permissions. So once you know how the permissions work, that's going to affect how you wanted to design it in the best way possible. But on a vanilla site, what I usually like to do, I like to do just some simple cosmetic things.
All right.
So the first thing I will do in the top right-hand corner, I like to go to this, I guess you could call it a sprocket, and we're going to click on that, and we're going to go to site settings right here. And the first thing we're going to do is right here we got title, description, and logo. I'll drill into this. And the first thing I like to do is, team site is, like I said, a generic statement, but mainly this is what I call a homepage. This is my homepage. And I think that from a user perspective, that just makes better sense. I usually like to update my logo, and you can click on from computer.
That's new, isn't it?
No, it's always been there.
Really?
That's been there for as long. See, I started using it with WSS 2.0. That's been there for as long as I can remember.
Huh. I'm learning because I just do basic stuff too, but there's if you go back to those settings, tons of them in there to play around with.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Like I said, I'm gonna try to be as basic. But really stick with the skeleton here. So we're gonna go from computer and choose file, and I believe, let's see if I think I created one here. I think I got some graphics. Actually, no, we'll go back one. My apologies. And I believe I used this one. And you can just use your own. Right. And what this is going to do, this is actually going to upload your graphic, there we go,
nice, into
the assets page in SharePoint. So that's usually the first thing I do. The next thing I like to do is I'll go to change the look down here. And I kind of got like a black and green kind of motif. And so I'll try to find, and they got different ones here to play around with. Some are pretty ghastly, but this one's kind of close to mine. It's got a little bit of a greenish to it. And
I like the other one called lime. Yeah, the lime one actually. They're right there. Nope, one over left.
This one?
Yeah.
That one. That would
right.
Yeah. Maybe high contrast. You remember those? In Microsoft?
Like, I don't want it that color.
I'm gonna click try it out here and see what we think. and it should prop it up here. Yeah, it looks a little bit better. It kind of matches. Plus, it's easy to focus on. Little tip here, blue is the hardest color for your eyes to focus on. So if you have a lot of eye fatigue and you have a lot of blue, get rid of the blue.
Wow, I never do that. And you know what's funny is I never do the decorative part with my clients. So there you go.
Yeah, so like I said, this is real basic. You can come up with a better logo and make it a little bit better. This is just for demonstration purposes. And we basically have a clean canvas here. So now we can start to think about how we want to design. But before we do that, we really need to talk about permissions.
Okay.
So permissions in SharePoint is very similar to a traditional Windows file server, meaning that you're going to have inheritance from the parent. So the parent could be, in our case, the G drive. Like if you got the G drive and you or a C drive, you right mouse click the C drive itself and go to permissions. That's your parent, and then the next folder or a root folder you put in is going to inherit it from that, and so on and so forth. So we really need to think about how we want to structure this. On our home page, usually this is a page where everybody's going to hit, so you need to have at least some view capabilities to do this. And you really want to keep your home page just for light things. This is just my opinion. Like if you want to put announcements or links or things that are just not heavily for your file system, this is a great spot to go to do that. And then we're going to talk about subsites in a minute and what I like to use for those. But so permissions is a traditional inheritance system. So it's going to start with the site level permissions. So let's look at the site level permissions, and then we're just going to dig further deeper. And then we're going to go back again to our sprocket, go back down to our site settings. First thing we'll look at is site permissions. This is the parent. This is where everything starts at. So and what I mean by that is by default, when I create a document library, which we'll get into later, or even a folder within inside that document library, it's all going to inherit it from this right here. And this is all default. These are groups. So these are a SharePoint group. Okay. So one of the first questions you might be thinking, well, we have directory synchronization. We have an on-premise Active Directory server, and we do a directory sync up here. Can I use those groups? Absolutely. And this is going to here's a tip that's going to save you a lot of headache. When you go to set up your groups, and if you want to use your Active Directory groups, just make sure that you have 3 different levels. You have domain local, you have global, and then you have universal. Make sure the group is a universal group. If it's a universal group, it'll show up in here, and you can apply it and assign permissions. So just that tip right there will save you a lot of headache, because a lot of people are like, I don't see my groups. I know I got directory synchronization. I just don't see them. But by default, obviously with mine, I don't have directory synchronization, so I'm going to have SharePoint groups. And you can actually use a combination of both. So you can use directory synchronization groups from your Active Directory, or you can use SharePoint groups. You actually use a combination. But one thing we want to do is we want to focus on groups. So we do not want to put individual file level permissions to one person. So Jane from accounting needs access to this one folder, and only she needs access to this folder, or maybe she's only that right. Well, what you need to do is you need to create a group with proper permissions and assign it to that. Just like in the file server world, it's no different in SharePoint. You want to follow those same best practices. So in here, these are your defaults. So we have read for visitors. And if I click on that, you notice we're going to have nothing in here. Well, actually, I put that in here. That by default, that's not in here. I put that in there for something I was testing. But by default, you're not going to have anything in here. And a lot of like a simple organization, they might put everyone as a visitor, so anybody that hits can read. Mm-hmm. Again, if this was a domain environment, you might want to put, say, domain users or something like that in here. That's another thing you can do. And to add it, like you said, you can simply go here and you can add users to the group. But we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. So we got SharePoint groups that we have. So we want to kind of keep a structure here. And then what we want to do is when we create our other, what they call them apps. That's the term. Even SharePoint's adopted the word apps in their aspect. I like to actually break the inheritance on different items that we create. All right, so right here, the main thing I want to focus on, this is where our site level permissions are. Okay, and we're going to come back to this in a little bit. And by default, SharePoint is going to create your first document library. You don't have to create it. It actually creates it for you. And that's actually the word documents right here. So we're actually going to click on documents on the left-hand side. Oh, I'm glad this came up. So you'll notice like, man, this looks completely different. Not say completely different, but it looks a little stark different than what I had before. This is Microsoft's new look. This is their new modern look for SharePoint. And it's nice for the users because it's a little bit more streamlined. It's a little bit more easy, bigger buttons, and it's easier to read. But when we're doing some administration work, I like to actually go back to the classic mode. And why I do that is bottom left-hand corner, I go back to classic because mainly because we have the ribbon. We can go back up to the ribbon.
I like that old one better too, but they always change it, Paul.
Yeah.
It takes 6 months to make it totally different. You got to go searching for stuff.
Exactly. So anyway, we're going to just look at the permissions here. So don't focus so much on the documents itself. I just want to focus on permissions. And how we get to that is we're going to go up here to the library. Okay.
Where is that without the classic view though?
You have to, in order to get this, you have to go to the classic view. As I said, for your administration purposes, you still need to go back to good old classic. I think Microsoft has said they're slowly but surely. From what they told me, that view was specifically for the end user, just a nice clean view for the end user.
Then they should call classic view technical view or administrative view.
I like that actually. That actually makes more sense. So anyway, we're going to go to library, and obviously we got a whole bunch of stuff here. Don't focus on this, but we want to focus on library settings, okay? So we're going to go to library settings here. And then as you can see, we actually have permissions just for this document library. So we're going to click on that.
Okay.
All right, here we go. So what we're going to want to do is, as you can notice, we still got kind of our same groups in here. Okay, but what I recommend that you do is actually for each document library that you have, I recommend that you break the inheritance and have unique permissions for that document library. And I usually give it a little bit of a better name. So for instance, this could be a county department docs or something like that, or service department. Just give it a more generic, a non-generic name. And I like to break the inheritance. And then one of the main reasons I want to do that, Lisa, is because Microsoft, and I can't, at least from right now, from the date of this recording, you have a 5,000 view item limit. Now, that doesn't mean you could put more than 5,000 items. I mean, you're limited to 5,000 items per document library. But what that means is that, say, for instance, I didn't break inheritance on this document, and they said there's more than 5,000 folders, and like a folder is an item, a file is an item, and you add the sum of that up. If that exceeds 5,000, and I try to go to break inheritance, it's actually going to give you an error, or it gives you a notification saying you can't do this because there's more than 5,000 items in this.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things with SharePoint Online that you have to think about. So you're like, okay, and that's why I say you don't want to necessarily have a master documents folder for just a dump all, just put everything in there, and then break it down per permissions. You want to really create a document library per department, I guess a good way to put it.
Well, that's what most of my clients do in small businesses. They just dump everything. In fact, they'll upload their entire their entire server.
Yeah, they can do
all
that.
in one. Just
And it can definitely be done, and you can definitely move things from within, but it's just best to kind of know why things are the way they are. And that's a big one, is to work around that limitation, because once you have it, it's very difficult to manipulate that.
Oh, yeah.
But in order to break inheritance, as a matter of fact, I've already did it on this one. I didn't realize that. But up in the top left-hand side, it actually says delete unique permissions. That means I've already broken inheritance from the site permission. Okay. And so we're going to go there. So I'm going to click on that again, and it says you're about to inherit permissions from the website. So I want to put it back to what you would see
for default.
Yep. So if I had a whole bunch of custom permissions and I just did that, I would just wipe all that out. Now I'm going back to inherit permissions. But so we're basically going to do the reverse. So this is what you're going to see by default. It's going to say stop inheriting permissions. So we're going to come in here and we're going to tell it to stop and say, okay. And now I can grant permission. So I can go in here, I can click grant permissions, and I'm my only user. I'm doing something I tell myself never to do. Is put one person in here. But this is just for demonstration. I'll hit F5. And of course, you see me in here. But now that you notice this, so just to kind of show you, we're going to go back to site permissions. So I'm going to go back to here, because you might see one thing in here that can throw off people. Okay, good. It actually didn't do it. You notice that my name's not in here because it's unique. I'm not bringing it back from there. So just keep that, and that's anything you create: a contact, a shared list, a calendar, any app that you create. I recommend from the roots, just break that inheritance and then have custom groups that you can make for that. So for instance, if this is the accounting department documents. So let's actually do this. I'm actually kind of go through a real world scenario here. So I'm gonna go back to library settings. Actually change the name of this. So instead of documents, we're going to call this accounting documents. Now, one thing that I want to do now is I want to create a particular group that's just for this accounting documents.
Okay.
So the way I do that is we're going to go to our star, or our wrench, sprocket. I keep calling it a wrench. I don't know why I do that.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go to people and groups. And now I want to create a new group. So we're going to, let's see here, show all of our groups here. And we'll do a new group. There we go. And we'll call this accounting documents.
You're naming a group the same thing as the...
You can. I usually put what it is, so because usually you can either do by permission. So this could be accounting documents, edit, or something like that.
All right.
And you can even type in some more description. So I'm going to be the group owner, and this is going to have edit rights. Okay. Say create, and there we go. And of course, since I'm the owner, it automatically makes me a member. But now I want to apply this to that accounting documents portion. So we go back to accounting documents. Go back to our library. You can get very used to the ribbon when you do SharePoint, at least from my admin side.
Yeah. And
we're going to go to where my permissions. And I've already broken inheritance, so now I can actually grant permissions. And we should, if everything... And if you notice, I just start typing the word accounting, and it'll pre-fill all your stuff in. So I'm going to pop that in here and say, before I get too far here, I'm going to hit show options. Because one thing that I do, say for instance, you had like 50 users in this group, you don't necessarily want to send them an email invitation every time you do this. I do that as well. I uncheck that box, and I just keep it as such. And of course, and I put it at an edit level.
That brings in nice help desk calls.
Yes, it does. Like, where does email come from? I don't. What is that? I don't know.
I still have permission?
I don't know about the SharePoint. What is this? So if I hit F5, there I go. And so I'm going to go ahead and be a good admin and remove my individual account, because we don't want that. We always want to see groups.
All right.
And there we go. So now it's easy maintenance. When you add a user and you add a group to that user, it works out well. And you actually will see that group in your, I believe you'll see it in your Office 365 admin under the groups, users and groups section in there. So when you create new users and you want to give them the same groups, then off you go. So that's really permissions 101. Just as a recap, you get the site level permissions, and then everything's going to inherit by default. Best practice is to, at the root level at least, any new app you create, calendar, contact, list, document libraries, break that inheritance, and then create a group for that resource, and then structure it that way. And by knowing that, it's going to help you design your layout a lot more efficiently, and hopefully break some of those snags that come down the road, especially with that 5,000 item view limit that you have.
I miss NT. It was so easy to manage users there. Okay, well, I'm going to be honest. That was a little confusing for me because I don't typically work with groups that have that much need.
Okay.
It is confusing for me, and I admit that in my courses because I just want to take a stop break to tell folks that not every small business needs this kind of level of permission, so don't get confused and think you have to spend a couple hours configuring it for 5 people. Right, Paul?
Right. Yeah, it really just depends. If you have a small,
Right.
A very, very small environment, a single document library might work out fine. I mean, it just really depends on the situation, but it's still always good practice to definitely use groups though when assigning those permissions, even if you're one person or 500 people,
right,
and just to go from there. But the main thing about it is just know the inheritance of it. It will, anything that you create, like I said, any app that you create, it automatically inherit what the root level or the site level permissions are.
I think that was one thing I took away, that I think what happens is I get the calls, people want me to help fix stuff in SharePoint.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to go back and I think that I've seen that 5,000 max before, so now I know why.
Yes.
I've seen that, yeah.
And what Microsoft says, it's a hard set limit they put into their SQL servers on the back end. And because you're in a cloud environment or a shared environment, or because you have multiple tenants on the same hardware, it's there for performance, because they're saying if you have really large view limits, it's really taxing on the SQL server. So it just helps keep everybody happy.
Right.
It's like you please one, but you affect 400 people type thing.
There are different levels. So there are different levels of Office 365. So this basic stuff would, like a company of 1,000 people, let's just say, have this type of setup as well, right?
Yes, it's no different. If you have 1 or 2,000, you have the same resources. Right. That's what makes that's one of the beauties of cloud-based computing, is that the little mom and pop can take the infrastructure of what a Fortune 500 company would used to invest and be able to run their company. Right. And that's where to me, that's where it really shines.
Yeah, it does.
But I will say this, Lisa, to me, the permissions is by far probably the most difficult thing to grasp. But as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. But once you know how SharePoint operates, or let's say SharePoint thinks things should be, how permissions are structured, then everything else is point and click. I want this, I want that, I want this type thing.
I think what I'm going to do for my next client that calls in, and this is maybe a tip for those that are trying to get into more of this, is with your first client that you're not 100% sure about, be clear with them. We got to do some testing. And, honestly, Paul, I've told some people, permissions are not my favorite thing to deal with. Nope. It is very confusing. And so the next one I get, I'm going to say, let's do some testing. Let's log into everybody's and make sure that the views work. Don't assume you're doing it right. Mm-hmm. And most of my clients are under 10 users. So most of them are fine with doing testing, so then they can see who sees what.
Right.
Edit what. Yeah.
And what's nice about this being a video resource, just rewind back to that spot where we talked about it and just replay it a few times. Obviously, you can't beat doing it as well. And once you kind of like, okay, the rest is hopefully pretty straightforward.
Everything makes me nervous the first time I do it. And even into where I either have to give up and say I really hate it and I'll have someone else do it, or I'm like, oh, it's nothing now. I think I'm going to keep this video for sure, because I do need to step up my game. But remember, most of my clients do dump all their stuff into one document library, and that's it.
Yeah, and hopefully knowing this information, he's like, well, it's not really best to do that. Let's create maybe 2 or 3, and what's your department? You have accounting. You might have a service department. Even if it's just 2, let's just break it up into those 2, and it just helps manage permissions better and security, and it just helps the flow with it.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm going to work on that.
So let's dive into some of the cool features here and some of the things we can do with SharePoint. And as you can see out of the gate, we actually get one document library, but let's say we want to create another one. How do we do that? And the way I like to do that is I go to site contents here on the left-hand side.
Okay.
And here, of course, and this actually was nice. The nice view about this, it actually shows you all the different apps that have already been pre-created for you. Like there's an announcements one that you probably noticed on the home page, and there's the links. Now, this site assets, this is actually a system document library that's created. You remember my logo that I did? It actually automatically puts it in here for me.
Oh,
okay. So this is a site that's this is kind of a system folder. You can think of it that way. Okay, but we're going to add an app. So we're just going to simply click add an app. It's not too pretentious. It's a lot cleaner than what it used to be. It's a lot prettier than what it used to be. And here's our document library. So we'll click on that. All right, so maybe this one is service documents, something like that. Okay, click create. And there we go. Now, what it does, if you notice on the left-hand side, it actually kind of puts it in this recent and it kind of indents it out. And that's supposedly just to say, hey, this is where it's at if you're looking for it. But what I like to do is I click on edit links right here. And I like to move this around. So if you just click and hold, you actually can drag this wherever you want. So I'm going to put it under here, for instance. Just click and drag and drop. Just hit save. There we go. That looks a lot cleaner, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So we'll click on, now we got service department. So now we have a whole nother document library that we'll go in.
Permissions.
Yep. So we're going to go, since it's so important and it's so vital that we understand this, we're going to go in our permissions and use best practice, and let's break that inheritance. Oh,
like stop, drop, and roll.
And I'm not going to go through the part of adding the groups and everything, but you get it. Okay. Yeah. So this
is the part where we can tell the students watching, this is your lab exercise. Go log in and play with the toys and practice. You can do it with one user. You just did it.
Yep, absolutely you can. So staying along with document libraries, one of the features, and to me this is actually one feature, this one feature to me is worth using SharePoint on its own. And that's called versioning. And versioning is by default set up for you. So I'm in a document library. So let's go look at our versioning options. So let's go back to library. Let's go back to library settings. And we're going to see versioning settings right here. Okay. So by default, it's going to be, we're going to create major versions. And that's what I keep. You can do the major, minor, and you can maybe research that, why that might come in handy. 99.99% of businesses, this is way overkill. Yeah. This is the simple way to do it. Just create, and if you can see, it defaults to 500. That's probably a little overboard, because even though with your subscription you get a terabyte of storage with your 365 subscription, and you can fill that up pretty quick. A terabyte can be filled up pretty quickly. Now versioning will count against it. So if you have a document that's 5 megabytes, and you have another version of that, that's 10 megabytes that's coming off your threshold there. So you might want to just regulate that. So I'll go in here and I will put like 30. I think 30 is plenty. And that's really about it. That's why I default.
Like 30 restores.
It really is, and that's one of the beauties about you can go back 30 different versions, and this is where like ransomware protection comes in. So for some reason you had a local sync to a file store and ransomware went in and encrypted. Well, it's going to encrypt the latest version. You can actually go back to one or two previous versions and restore it, and you're ready to go. So that's another nice benefit of using this product. So we'll say, okay.
Yeah, just as a quick stop right there, when clients that have their own user account is also the admin account.
Yes, that's not good.
The hacker and phisher could come in here and do all this adjustments and delete things, remove all the versioning.
Yes. Now, if
create some havoc.
Now they would really have to spend some time on your account to do that, because versioning. Yeah, and that's where the two-factor comes in. It's very important. And even if you're a one-man army and you have 365, and a lot of people are like that, you had your global admin account, but create your own account. And you're just quote unquote a standard user. So you don't have those global admin features. That's actually an awesome point you brought up, Lisa. That's definitely a best practice to do, even with one person.
Yeah, I know. But the thing is, you get a lot of people that are like, well, I don't want to have 2 accounts.
Yeah, and you don't have to license it, because the global admin account can be unlicensed because you don't have a mailbox associated with it, right, and such. And then, but that has all the permissions. So it's that's definitely something you want to
well, as soon as I saw that versioning history, I was like 30. Well, a hacker could go in and say 0, and 2 weeks later, you don't even know that they did it, because half the time, my clients that get hacked, they've been hacked for weeks. Oh yeah, they don't even know sometimes.
My goodness. Usually you always get the people are calling me saying I'm emailing these things. What's going on? Typically you found out pretty quick because the people contacted the user saying, stop emailing me this stuff.
Well, you know what, I'll just say the wire transfer fraud people, what they're doing is not doing that, sending out. They're just getting the copies of the emails and learning about the company.
Oh yeah.
So they're not even doing it. They're just investigating.
Yep, they do that. I've seen it more. Yeah, because you're thinking, man, they're really putting thought behind this. And
oh yeah.
They
don't even know. I can't believe.
What's sad is that if they weren't successful at it, they won't do it. So obviously there are companies that are doing it.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately. Okay, so with versioning, let's take a look at versioning here real quick. We'll do a little demo. Let's see. I think I renamed it, so I got to remember I put my stuff.
Right.
So I have as you can see, I have some stuff in here. I want to put some things here just to demonstrate. But if I go into I call it ellipsis or the dot, people like to say. So if you click
There's
on
no official words for any of this stuff. You just make it up.
I think ellipsis is the official word. I think it's called
3 dots.
Yeah, I call it dot because when I say ellipsis, people are like, what? So anyway, we're going to hit it one more time. And down, let's see if my eyes serve me right. There it is. There's our version history.
Oh man, it's like 3 levels deep.
Yep. So, so if a user wants to restore their file, they would go to the version history, and then they can go in here and say, okay, obviously this is my original version.
Right.
And let's actually, don't necessarily have to restore it, but maybe I'll just view it. Okay. I'm supposed to open up.
Do they keep it hidden down there so people just don't mess with it?
Yeah, because if they had it where it's pretty common, I could see people accidentally going there. I mean, where it's at here, you would actually have to have a purpose to go in.
Can some people have restriction that they can't do that?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. I think that's smart.
Well, yeah. Well, by default, you have to have edit rights to be able to do this. Okay. So if you are read-only or view, you won't be able to do restore history from that. But this is actually wants to open up in because I have Word installed locally on my computer. So you probably won't see that. But what you would do, this would open up Word. It will show the document. It will actually even show you a comparison. This is the difference between version 1 and version 2.
Nice.
And it will actually give you a comparison. But we'll keep it nice and simple here. But that's the basic version. And anytime anybody hits save, it creates a new version. So that's how that works. But it's a very powerful feature.
Yeah, there's a lot of powerful things in this alone that we could spend hours talking about. With the online collab.
Exactly.
Sharing. Yeah.
So another thing I like to point out is actually the search capabilities. And this is, again, because it does not only does it do the metadata. What I mean by that, a bit like the title, the description, the type of file, the people who designed it, the date when it was created, that's all your metadata, okay? But actually it'll search the contents of the file itself, okay? And that's real powerful too, because there's 2 types of people that work. You have data filers, which is kind of, that's how I work. That's kind of your traditional. And then we have people called like data stackers. You can think of those maybe as your millennials and their newer way of working. They don't care where they put the data. They just know where it's at, and I can just search for it. Yeah. So SharePoint solves both problems. It works very well for your data filers, and it works very well for your data stackers.
And what about your data hoarders?
Yeah, that too. Because it gives you a terabyte of storage, so they can just dump stuff.
All I can think of is data hoarding, data hoarding.
Absolutely. So we're going to do a quick search. Like, for instance, I have, you see the word checklist here. So I'm just going to type in checklist, top right-hand corner. And it'll actually give you a kind of a Google-esque
Nice.
type of search. And I can actually hover and I can get a preview.
Now, this is nice. I have actually never used the full SharePoint for myself, so
Mhm.
I like this.
Yeah, the searching is amazing. Between versioning and searching, I mean, that blows away your traditional file servers and the ability to just the data protection too. But obviously you have a whole bunch of stuff, and on the left-hand side, if you notice, it's like this is Excel, and this is Paul. Maybe I want to see more from Paul, and you can actually drill down if you wanted to see more and more. And so if you had more, these are actually filters. So if pretend you had like a 50 results, and I want to drill more and more and more, this will actually give you the way you can fine tune it. Right from little tags on the left-hand side, but great searching features. Another selling point for trying to sell it, for using it.
I did a podcast with somebody last year,
Mm-hmm.
and they talked about the share or the search rather
Mm-hmm.
so much that I was actually like confused, because I don't think a lot of people know that it's, the search is great and all that. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes too, the YouTube I did. There's just so many different types of training for SharePoint, you know what I mean? And that
It
was
is.
about the searching.
And like I said, I'm trying to, hopefully this video will be successful in that we're just trying to, if I just want to set up a basic site, this is what we do. Just some basic to get good functionality out of it. Okay. So we talked, and with the searching too, I mean, with the SharePoint on premise, the work you used to have to do to set up all the crawlers and everything, out of the box, it's just ready to go. That's just the beauty of this. It saves you so many hours of setup. So let's drill back into our document library, and let's actually look at our recycle bin. Okay, say I'm a user. I'm gonna check this box right here, and if I go up to more, I should have the ability to delete, or I can hit delete on my keyboard. Either way, I'm
Or
gonna
you
delete.
can probably hit the little 3 buttons and delete there too, because there's so many ways to delete.
Yes, there's multiple ways to delete. Yes.
I know.
So it's gone. You're like, oh no. So, and Lisa, we were talking before the video, a prime example was, if you remember, if you have a G drive that's mapped to a file share on your file server, and when a user deletes the file, you have to go back to your backup system to restore the data. Not so much here. We're actually going to go to recycle bin, and there it is. We're actually
Yeah, and just like users, they're going to consider that a place to store data. That's never the recycle bin. They know where to go get it now.
And again, because this is on a shared system, there is, let's talk about retention real quick.
Okay.
With the recycle bin, and this is hard set by Microsoft, it's not a way to change it. There is a way to change it with your OneDrive by default, but there's not but for your SharePoint, this is hard. So you have 93 days, okay? So 93 days when it's deleted before Microsoft permanently deletes it. And I talked earlier, there's a feature called two recycle bins. There's a recycle bin that all your users can see.
Yeah.
And then there's a recycle bin called a second stage recycle bin that only your admins can see. And as you can see, because I'm an admin, it gives me this link here called Show My Second Stage.
It's like your double secret.
Yeah. So what happens is, say you had a disgruntled employee or just user error, and they go in here and they actually empty the recycle bin. So I'm gonna actually just delete the section. Now they're like, hey, it's really gone. Well, not necessarily. So if we go back to second recycle bin,
I love
there it is, and we actually can restore the section. So it puts a lot of protection for, again, human error, disgruntled employees, things like that. That is a lifesaver. That is saves so many users.
Nice.
It's not even funny. So let's go back to our accounting documents, and we notice there it is.
Employees.
I've been through it. Or Lisa, I know you do a lot with Outlook. Say they'll go in and they'll delete all their stuff out of deleted items, and they leave, and they don't realize that you can go to your hard deleted items and restore all the data. Of course, or you get backups even on top of that as well. But there's our data.
Nice.
So again, so you have 93 days. So let's take let's take a quick step back in here with that. So when it's deleted, the clock starts to tick. And so say after 2 weeks, a user goes into the recycle bin and deletes it. And now it's in the second stage recycle bin. Mm-hmm. It's still, that discontinued on. So the clock doesn't restart again. And so it's 93 days from the time it's originally deleted. Now, if it's restored and then deleted again, then the clock starts over again.
Okay.
Okay. So
now it's restored, so it starts over.
Right. So you basically have a 3-month retention policy for deleted items. But with OneDrive, you can, by default, it's 30 days, but you can actually, Microsoft in its wisdom say you can go up to 3,650 days for your OneDrive data to hold into your recycle bin. So that's a little crazy. But SharePoint, it's locked in.
Do you ever do OneDrive to SharePoint migrations?
No.
You work at business, you probably don't get that.
Yeah, we do OneDrive to SharePoint, but not necessarily SharePoint to OneDrive.
Oh, no, that's what I meant. Sorry. OneDrive to SharePoint migrations.
Yes, we've done some. Yeah, we've done some of that. Yes, especially if say if a user leaves the company or and all their OneDrive data, what they'll do is they'll put it in a like a special bucket or a catch-all bucket, or a particular document library, if you will.
Right.
And they'll put that user stuff in there, secure it to only say their manager, and then they'll just figure out what they want to do with it. And if it has nothing been done with it, then it'll get automatically purged. That's just a typical policy I see a lot of. All right, so let's talk about some more features that I think are good selling points for this, because I'm trying to think of this from a technical point of view, or trying to do it from a 365 point of view, is alerting. And alerting, business owners love this feature, or department or bosses, how you want to call it, is if you go up to your ribbon again, there's something called Alert Me. And I can set me an alert for this document library. So maybe this is a sensitive folder or the document library itself. You can put in these alerts and say, look, I want to know when an item is deleted. Mm. Or I want to know when somebody else changes a document. And I want you to send me either immediately, let me know these things, or just send me a weekly summary. And this is a great little report out of the box. It's real simple, that it'll allow them to see what's going on in real time. So again, this is something that you might want to put for just a generic one, but if you have like a sensitive one that maybe has some financial documents or something stored in here, right. Like a compliance officer or just a business owner might like to set this up just so they can stay on top of what's going on, because if they get the notification immediately, they can go right away to that user, say, hey, what are you doing? Why did you do this? Or something like that. If it's
disgruntled employee deletions.
Yes.
That's my new thing.
Disgruntled employee. I'm going to delete everything.
Give me an alert.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm just quick review of my list here. Make sure I'm on pace. So far, so good. And all right. So what I like to do now, Lisa, if you think it's a good flow, is showing how to sync document libraries. You might not, even though the web interface is nice, it's a nice tool, but it might not be the most efficient way to manage your documents. Maybe you might prefer to work on a file explorer instead. And you really have two different choices to do that. One is you can sync with your OneDrive client, or two, you can set up a map drive.
Oh, map drives are fun.
Well, I think map drives are fine for just a one-off. Maybe you got a project, or maybe you got an employee that just is dealing with some documents that they want to deal with just for a short period of time, maybe for a project that they're working on. Because map drives are not what I call the most reliable. Because once you get everything set up, it's going to work great for like a week. Yeah. Come Monday morning, they're like, I got an X on my drive, and I double click it and it's giving me an error and I can't get in. Well, usually that's because when you log into Office 365, you have a checkbox that says, remember me, remember my computer, my settings. Well, that's a cookie that puts on your system, but it's has an expiration date. And when the expiration date on that cookie goes away, your map drive won't work anymore. You have to actually go log back in, check the box, and then you should be able to get to your map drive. So I'll only use it for one-off scenarios. We'll still demonstrate it here just so we can see it.
Well, I'll give an example of, just for the text here, that I get clients that still really want that map drive. I have a video out on YouTube actually on how to do it. It still kind of works. I tell people, this is going to break and you're going to pay me every time to fix it. And they're like, that's fine. They are corporate minded map drive people.
Yep.
They want that S drive. I call it the S drive for SharePoint.
Yep.
It's their mind. It's their mentality. I sell a lot of prepaid tickets and those people call when it breaks. Sometimes I try to get them over into the sync and they can't wrap their head around it. So as long as you tell them, and Paul just said it, it'll break. It will.
It will. It's not even, oh, it might break. No, it will.
That's like, it will break.
It's death, taxes, and shared map drives in SharePoint. They will break.
Guaranteed help.
It's guaranteed, yes. So, well, let's look at the sync tool. So I want to sync this with my client. Now, of course, though, I think the only thing you're seeing on my computer is just the browser. Is that right, Lisa?
I can just see your browser and you're in Chrome.
Right.
You're going to need to be in Internet Explorer probably to do.
You will. When we do the map drive, we're going to.
Here I'm telling you and you're the one teaching.
No, you're
I'm just used to my people.
So anyway, we're going to click on sync. And what it's going to do is saying that it's going to open up OneDrive. Now, on my OneDrive, I already have my OneDrive synced up to my Paul at sysadmin today account. So it's already got that up there. So if that's already done, this is going to make this a lot simpler. So I'm going to say open up my OneDrive.
Now, don't be confused with OneDrive and SharePoint.
Right. OneDrive,
engine.
yeah, OneDrive is just the client or the agent that is the vehicle and how it connects to it. So you guys didn't see it, but in the right corner, my little screen popped up and it said it's already done. It's already synced. Now, Lisa, I want to open up, I want to share my File Explorer window, if that's possible.
Yeah, I think it's okay for us to do this on the camera. You have to stop sharing and then reshare it again.
Okay, let's do that real quick.
Change that window.
All right, let's do it.
Hey, we're back.
We are back. Let's see, go to my file. I'll try to do this as fast as possible.
There we go. We're still on your Chrome.
Oh, I picked the wrong one. Sorry.
That's all right.
Herb derb. All right, share. Where is my? There it is. I did. I picked the. There we go.
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So over on the left-hand side, of course, there's my OneDrive. I want to focus on this right here. This is my SharePoint one. So if I go to here, you'll see there's my, and it shows my cloud status. I'm on a Windows 10 computer. And if you notice, there's all my stuff. Now, keep in mind, if I delete and just delete everything out of here, it will sync up to SharePoint in real time. And again, it won't be totally deleted. It will be in the recycle bin of SharePoint. Okay. So, but if I want to add, I can drop, I can create a new folder. So let's do that. So let's create a new folder and I'll say from computer. Okay. And then that's going to sync up. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go back to our SharePoint. So I just wanted to show this real quick. So I'm going to stop sharing. And we're going to go back to here. Can y'all see this?
Yep.
All right. And let's see here. Let's do F5. Oh, show a new folder. It hasn't synced that. It's actually still looking for changes, but that's going to come up with the name of the folder once the initial sync goes away. But that's how the sync works. So it will, like again, if it deletes, it will show stuff in recycle bin.
I tell my clients, if it doesn't change the name now, it's like watching paint dry. It'll do it. Just other things.
Well, at least if you already have a video on the map drive, if you want to link that in the note, I mean, we don't have to.
Well,
yeah, I think that'll probably be the most efficient thing. I'm not sure how our time is, Lisa, but that's, I think from the basic standpoint, I think that's some of the basics of SharePoint.
okay.
Some things that you can play around with or the for that is if you go back to site contents, I would go back to add an app. Just take a look at all the different things you can do. Task looks is pretty popular. You have links, so you have like a whole bunch of URLs and internal links that you can put in for people.
It's endless what you can do with this now, honestly.
Yeah, custom lists is very, very powerful, and also like calendars and contacts. So those are all some of the basic things that you can just dump right in, start populating the data. And what's nice about calendars and contacts, you can actually link that up to your Outlook. So once you populate a contacts list, you actually can, in the ribbon, you can go sync with Outlook, and it'll link it right up to your Outlook, which is a nice feature.
Does it work on mobile phones? Probably.
I haven't tried it on mobile phones. I'll just traditional Outlook. Yeah, you're probably right.
That's my biggest call I get is people are like, we want a shared calendar on our phones. I'm like, I know, don't we all? I tell them, here's how we fix it.
That's right.
I wasn't being snarky. I was just like, they're disappointed when they set things up and they can't have everything. So I'm like, well, we can do that, but there's other things you got to do. I don't think that this would work on the phone though.
No, I don't think it does. I haven't seen that myself, but all right. So Lisa, the last demonstration I will do here is I want to show how you can access your data from within Word or Excel, PowerPoint, etc. Okay. So I'm gonna have to change the sharing screen again. So
all right. So while he's doing that, I'm going to let everybody know that I was going to also do a SharePoint video for you to learn how to train your end users. Real simple. It won't be long. It's just some little tips and stuff, because a lot of people, they think that their clients won't use it. You know what I mean, Paul?
Right.
So like if I give you a demo on how I teach my clients, then you can say, well, look, you show them and they'll go, oh, okay, it's easier than we think, you know. The video you did today was more technical, permission, setup, and under the hood. Clients wouldn't do this.
Right. It is something you need to, from a tech perspective, this is how I do just a basic setup for SharePoint.
Right.
But one of the common things I hear about SharePoint, or even Office 365 in general, is the mindset of the end user, the business owner, saying, well, I like my Word and Excel. It's on my computer. I know where it's at. Well, they can still use Word and Excel that's on their computer.
Right.
Based off their subscription, they'll get a desktop copy, or if they have a open license or retail copy they bought from the store or whatever, so they can use their copy of Word in this case. And they're like, well, how do I get to my data? So maybe I want to start a brand new document. This is a new document, okay? I want to save that to my SharePoint site. Well, how do I do that without drag and dropping it with my sync tool or using my map drive to save it and then drag and drop it into that? Well, you can do it right from here. So if you just go to File, and I'm going to do a Save As. And if you notice, I got my OneDrive bucket and I got my Sites bucket. So we'll go to Sites. And we're going to go to my sysadmin today. I've already been to one.
You got to be logged in to your Office 365.
Correct. Yes, you have to be logged in through your account. So you have to have.
Yeah. And I'll just stop here and say that this is where people start going, it's not working. I'm like, because you're logged into your Gmail account with your home Office 365.
Right.
This ain't gonna work then. You got to have it all set up right. So technicians, make sure people are logged out of their home, logged into the business.
Correct. And once we get done with this, I'll go to my account page so they can see what it looks like. No, that's a very, very good point.
Oh, yes. I troubleshoot that a lot.
I can imagine. We do too, actually. And we'll go to, in our case, you can see we got our accounting documents. So we're going to double click that. And I could drill down into a folder, but in this case, I'll just click Save.
But see, that's the way I don't train people, because it takes long to connect to the server. I have them go through their file explorer and go right to, which by the way, the sysadmin today's SharePoint button looks different sometimes than that, but I have them just go through that way.
Yep.
Because it chokes up on the server side.
It can. It just depends on the load or the network or the behind the scenes. But say I want to, if I just open this up, say I want to open up a new document. So I will Let's see if we go to open. This is the reverse of what we just did.
All right.
So go back to sites, go back to here, accounting, and maybe I want to open up test Word document. There's my test Word document. And if I hit save in the top left-hand corner, you can always tell I'm on a SharePoint one, because if you're on a local file, you won't get this little double arrow in the circle up here.
What? Where's that? Oh.
Yep. Actually, there it is. The double arrow in the circle up there. I'm sorry. Another window popped up, another Word window, and you didn't see
Oh, that's
it.
fine.
My apologies. But if you see that, that means you're actually on a OneDrive or a SharePoint site.
Oh, right there. Okay.
Yep, when you get the double arrow.
Oh,
right
so
there.
that means you're on the cloud saving.
Yes, that's correct.
Nice.
And every time you click that, guess what? A new version gets created, and all those protections are in place. But that's really it in a nutshell, Lisa. I mean, of course, we can go to the nth degree, even at a basic level, and just talk about all the different apps that are there and things like that. But that's really it. So just how do we access our SharePoint, how to set up just the basics of permissions and how that's factored in.
Right.
And how users can access the data either through a web portal, a map drive, through their Office application, or through their sync tool, through the OneDrive client sync tool. And yep, that's our demonstration of the basics.
Well, here's how I'm going to close this video is if people are interested in me doing a demo for the end user, like, for you to learn how to train yours, I need you to email me, lisa@callthatgirl.com. And if I don't get anybody, that means I'm not going to make the video. That means they watched and they want it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think, Paul, though, you did a great job today, taking it to a different level. Everybody complains about permissions. So I think you did a great job on that for sure. And everything else, of course.
That was the biggie. The permissions, because honestly, once you wrap your head around that, everything else is just flows.
It is, but I think a lot of people don't play with the site settings enough. I don't. And I know if I spent an hour just going through it, I'd learn a lot more.
You can. Yep.
You could spend a couple hours in there doing a video. Oh my gosh, it's so many.
It's really good. You
Like
can
Exchange too.
Yeah. Very, 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 very true.
All right. Well, Paul, I think you did a great job today. Thank you very much for coming on. If anybody wants to check out your podcast, it's admintoday.com, right?
Correct.
Great. And you can subscribe and check out all of his past shows. Paul, you pretty much do it yourself too, no guess, right?
That's just me. I mean, maybe down the road I'll get a guest or two. I'm sure I will eventually. But yeah, so far it's just me and a mic. That's
awesome. I do my own shows too, but I sometimes have guests. You've been on one before.
I have, yes.
I had Paul on before. Yeah. First time on video, though.
That
all
is.
Right. All right, gang. Thank you very much, Paul. I have a little video up next for the students to watch. And that's it. I'll see you in course number 9. Thanks, guys. All right, gang, that's it. That was our course. I appreciate you checking it out. And if you need anything, remember in the notes below, you can sign up with that River. Also, be sure to check out my callthatgirl.com website where I sell all my Office 365 products, videos, ebooks, Outlook training, PowerPoints. I kind of have a lot of stuff there. So go ahead and head over to callthatgirl.com and check it out. And that's it. I will see you in the next course. Thank you. Bye-bye.